Are you lost? Or are you looking for something? Walking around here, it's dangerous. This is not recommended for everybody. Kiddos can come along, but they're gonna only have more questions than answers. But that's part of this journey. Enter if you dare. My name is Dakota Frandsen, and this is Specialist of the Strange radio show, where we go into various topics of the unknown and bring them to light. And maybe, just maybe, we'll discover something new along the way. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. You're not going to want to miss this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dakota Frandsen, and welcome to a brand new episode of Specialist of the Strange radio show. I am your host, and tonight we are going to deviate from our usual programming just a little bit. Tonight, I'm going to go over some details about a Halloween special that I will be launching on my YouTube channel, as well as Facebook and Instagram Live, pending, keyword, pending being able to figure out appropriate, being able to figure out the technical side of things. Let's put it like that. Those of you who follow me on my social media pages will already know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who are new to the program, those of you who haven't heard the news yet, and for those of you who may have heard the news yet, but want to get a little bit more information about what's going on, this is the time. This Halloween, at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, I will be launching a documentary-style program on my YouTube channel. Pending the success of this video presentation, will determine whether or not I create more like it. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, by the time you hear this episode, I will officially be on location. By the time you hear this episode, work has already begun. It is here I'm going to address some concerns that have come up, go into a little bit of the backstory, and reveal a few new plans. Because tonight is all about the hunt for Olivia. A case so strange that it may just prove the existence of heaven and of time travel. Be sure to listen in, my friends, because this time, it's personal.
Hey everyone, Dakota Frandsen here, Specialist of the Strange. I just wanted to come with you real quick about potentially doing your own podcast. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? Maybe you got a lot of questions like, how do I record? How do I get my show into all these apps that are out there? How can I make money? There are probably several thousand other questions about getting this show off the ground that you have been formulating and communicating in your mind. And I'm here to tell you that there is a very simple answer to this. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your show. And best of all, it is 100% free. Get all the perks from the other guys without having to pay for subscription fees. And best of all, it is easy. And in fact, Anchor can match you up with sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast right now, which means you can get paid doing what you love. Isn't that the fucking dream, my friends? In fact, that's actually what I'm trying to do right now by reading this ad for you. It is amazing. It helps ease the process for guests, putting on music, whatever you want to do. So if you want to start your podcast, make some money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and several other fabulous people already using Anchor. That's Anchor FM/start. And I cannot wait to hear you on the air.
Alright, let's dig into this. Those of you who have followed my pages for a while now know that a lot of the focus I have in regards to dealing with the paranormal actually involves dealing with one's own mental health. There are a number of reasons behind this. Number one being someone who has a compromised mental state, being that they're dealing with a lot of trauma, may have been abused in the past, have legitimate mental disorders, or unfortunately may even be suicidal at some points. There can be cases where these compromised mental states can actually aggravate paranormal phenomenon. It is actually well known throughout history that incidents such as these, somehow trauma for some people kickstarts latent psychic abilities. There's even been documented by individuals within the United States military that participated in Operation Stargate, which is another episode entirely. Unfortunately, it seems that these mental traumas, these triggers, can actually have a genetic quality to them. As in, the parent, who was the one who faced the trauma, the damage done to them can be passed on to the child, even though the child has been relatively sheltered from those types of things. It is well documented that mental illness can be hereditary. That being said, it is also noted for possible psychic abilities to be inherited. All the indications show that there is a direct correlation between the two. However, in order to appropriately test these subjects, it may involve actually exposing individuals, even small children, to conditions that they should never be in the first place, in order to appropriately measure the effects. for all intents and purposes, you might as well be strapped into an MRI for the rest of your life. And it's why I've said on numerous occasions that understanding what's truly happening when these paranormal incidents occur, we may not be able to find an answer until the days where we can use our own minds and our eyeballs as cameras. And that technology is being developed where the mental images, our mind captures through our eyesight, are being translated into digital signals to where they can be read on computers. However, the images of those are quite blurry, so it might be a while before there's any significant updates in that area. Advancements in artificial intelligence, though, seem to be aiding that area. But even then, it might take a while before substantial developments will occur. Also, where we have things like the Fitbit, where it has a heart rate monitor and all these things to help you kind of watch your health, things like that. Even those armband machines you sometimes see at grocery stores, outside of pharmacies and places like that. Being able to compress every medical monitoring device we have and will develop in the near future into a small enough device that's comfortable to either rest on our wrist or even wear as a hat, or, unfortunately, where some developments are in place to where those measurements are done by a chip that's implanted in the hand that hospital staff can easily just scan and get all your medical information right there on the spot. A lot of conspiracy theorists say that these are ways for the governments to track the population, and while yes, that is the technical possibility, chances are the device you're using to listen to this show is all they need to track you, if you're genuinely worried about that type of thing. Now, I bring this up in order to acknowledge my own story. How unlikely the scenario is. How absolutely strange it is. And I'm going to confess something right now that I've only told a few people. I've been genuinely afraid for most of my life that this incident that inspired the Hunt for Olivia Halloween special may be a byproduct of a very sick mind. And there's practically nothing out there that could help me if that's the case. So in a way, clinging to the idea of experiencing something paranormal has been therapeutic. And I firmly believe, I don't even have to say I firmly believe, I have enough to go on to say that this incident provided me with the tools to be something most who also take on paranormal investigation cannot. And also provided me with tools that make me a greater force. Those of you who have followed my journey, or maybe you've heard of me through the YouTube channel, Strange But True Stories, you already know a few details. But there's things I kind of left out just for, partially because this incident is hard for me to talk about. But it it is also to condense for time. So here it is. My father was an abusive man. He is currently sitting behind bars at a jail cell, from last I heard, in Arizona, because of a combination of both Idaho's lock the door and throw away the key programs, and due to overcrowding by coronavirus. And he's in a jail cell. He will likely spend the rest of his life for sexually assaulting one of my sisters for most of her life. Possibly even getting her pregnant at one point. But the baby didn't take. My father's always been an abusive man. The day that same sister was born, he beat the crap out of my stepmother, my sister's mother, while she was in the hospital, just after delivery. And my father was the type of guy to be proud of the people he hurt. Viewed it as his sign of dominance. My mother, in what could be described as what some people have tried to accuse me as over-exaggerating the anxieties of a single mother. My mother constantly compared me to him, knowing damn well this was the stuff that happened. And growing up, turning into a guy like my father was one of my biggest fears. However, this incident, if in fact genuine and not me grasping onto false hope, became a sign. And because it became a sign that that wasn't going to be the case, that I was going to be a good man enough for my own daughter to break the laws of space and time to save my life. When I was 12 years old, I had a few exposures to paranormal events, including one that took place at the old Idaho State Penitentiary. And my relatives would also tell me stories where I was apparently one of those psychic kids who seemed to be awfully in tune with things going on. In fact, the sister I mentioned before, the whole reason my stepmother was aware that she was pregnant with her was because I told her. I was only 2 years old at the time, but apparently I walked up to her and put my hand on her stomach and said, "My sister's in here." But being that it was my stepmother's first child, she wouldn't know what to look for, and not too long after that, she went to the hospital, and sure as shit, she was pregnant. But because my mother is the type to purposely make people feel like shit, over-exaggerate, and take every little inconvenience as a direct attack towards her, probably because of her own traumas in life, it weighed heavily on me. To this day, I honestly feel like part of her hates me just because I was born a guy. She would constantly smack me around. I wasn't afraid to shave off all my hair because she would constantly That would be the first thing she would go to grab. A couple of times she tried choking me out. Slam me with whatever she could. Called me useless son of a bitch. Insensitive asshole. Pathetic man. Pair that with growing up in a small town of Murtaugh, Idaho, where if you didn't belong to the local church, you were treated like trash. It weighed heavily on me. And I tried to escape it by going to Murtaugh, living with my grandparents. And after a while, I tried to take my own life. But something stopped me. I tried to hang myself in a closet, and there was this blue light that had popped out of nowhere. It was powerful. It honestly stunned me for a bit. It took me a minute to get my eyes to adjust, then all of a sudden, it seemed like I was floating in space. I looked around. The only thing I could move on my body was my eyes, and it seemed like I was just floating in this weird space that it seemed like everything around me was flowing like I was underwater. It's the best way I know to describe it. Not long after that, a man showed up in front of me. His image was kind of blurry, but I could only make out that it seemed like he was wearing like a white robe and had kind of long brown, kind of dark blondish hair. And I felt comforted by his presence. He wasn't a threat. I mean, if anything, I could tell he was concerned about me. So, this man walks up to me, this figure, and he says, simply just says, Dakota, there's someone here to see you. He steps aside, and I see this little girl who's just bawling her eyes out. Seeing this little girl, I honestly felt guilty about what I was doing, even though I'd never seen her before. She walks up to me, and first thing I noticed, she looked a lot like me. Like she was somehow related. Yeah, I honestly come from a big family, so the first thing that came to mind was, okay, is this a sister of mine, or what's going on? And she walks up to me, and what she said was, Daddy, please don't do it. My heart sank, and I managed to get free just enough to wrap my arms around this little girl. She was sat there for a couple of minutes. It felt like probably just a couple seconds of what it felt like forever. And she stands up to give me a kiss on the cheek, and all of a sudden this vision, for lack of better words, stopped. I was back in my bedroom like nothing had happened. And that moment stuck with me for many years. I'm going to head to commercial break, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this and some of the research I've done in order to try to figure out what the hell happened to me. Welcome back. Before the break, I was telling you about the first incident where I ran into a little girl who may in fact be a daughter I have yet to have. Olivia... My apologies for the interruption. Olivia is what I eventually came to call her. A lot of people assume that this was a one-off situation, but I've been able to talk and interact with this little girl on numerous occasions. She helped me one of the times she appeared was the day I lost my grandfather to cancer. Through her, I was able to remote view into the room. Yeah. Oh, yeah. About that, the whole psychic kid thing. Yeah, I've always had, whenever a spirit sometimes nearby me, for some odd reason, I don't know exactly what sets it off. Like I said, it's going to be one of those things where I have to be strapped to like an MRI or something when it happens to see if there's any weird thing that pops up. But sometimes when a spirit is nearby or I get close to someone at an emotional level, I can essentially remote view through their eyes. Say like it's everybody's eyes are cameras, and for some reason the system that runs in my head picks up signals from other cameras that it should not be able to. And with it, I can dig into someone's mind, read them. And I can also tell when someone who I used to be able to read starts closing me off, because little do they know that if they set me off just right, I can see exactly what they're doing and tell whether or not they're being honest with me. And it was through, and obviously through my daughter. The best way I know to possibly think of it is her system was a lot like mine, so being able to pick up her signal was easy for me. And just as a light note, if anybody has a pair of earphones in right now, please let me know if you hear anything. Because realizing that with talking about her, she just popped up right behind me. We'll talk to you later, okay, baby? Anyway, one of the times she showed up was the day my grandfather passed away, and the weird thing was, my grandfather, as he was dying, acted like he could see her. In fact, he looked directly at Olivia and said, "Please, get the little kid out of here. Get that girl out of here. She doesn't need to see this." And of course, my family thought it was the ramblings of a dying man, but so far, my grandfather has been the only other person to actually be able to sense Olivia while he was still alive. And I've told this story partially because I know it could probably help some people who are in a similar mindset, but I was kind of hoping that whoever her mother would come forward and say that, "Hey, we need to talk. I think I've seen her too," because I've always kept a couple details to myself about Olivia's appearance as a way of testing whoever tries to make that claim, and so far no one has. The third major incident that Olivia appeared, I was actually on a river boat in Paris. And the weather started turning a little chilly. It was starting to rain a little bit, so I had the top deck of the boat to myself while went down below, and all of a sudden I felt like what felt like a tap on my shoulder. Now, naturally, I was thinking, okay, I'm in the way of somebody's picture, and they're asking me to move aside. So I was like, oh, hey, sorry. And all of a sudden, I look up. There's my grandfather with Olivia. And for those of you who don't know, this was a very emotional moment for me because my father was a piece of shit. My grandfather, he essentially raised me like I was one of his own. He tried with all of his grandkids, but being that I was the oldest, I was the one that got to have the most time with him. In fact, he's got 5 grandkids now that, technically 7, but 5 that are directly blood related. That, he hasn't met yet, but my aunt, who's kind of a piece of shit herself, is claiming that one of her youngest is seeing him in the middle of the night. And I'm not saying that it was like, oh, my family's mean. No. My aunt is currently letting some piece of shit guy run her life, and it has been enough to where at least 2 of her kids have tried to take their lives themselves. Just give you all an idea of how much this fucking messes with me. No. Anyway, back to the Paris incident. My grandfather said that he wasn't going to be poking his head around as much anymore, but occasionally check in because he didn't feel that I needed his guidance anymore. He disappeared, and before Olivia tried to disappear, I tried to get her to tell me, at least give me some sort of hint on who her mother was, but all she would tell me was, don't worry, Daddy, Mommy's coming soon. Just keep fighting, because Mommy's going to need you to fight for her. Being the extreme circumstances that led me to being able to see Olivia in the first place, I honestly fear what she means by that. I've had only 2 possible... I've only had 2 women come in my life that I thought maybe they're the one. The first was my fiance, who was actually murdered before I went on the Paris and Rome trip. And the second was a woman who, some of you may know, I was actually getting ready to move across country to be with, but turned out to be cheating the entire time. Tried to claim she forgot that we talked about getting back together, or even that we had talked about closing the gap. Then when I tried to clean the slate, just stay friends, because I had some business ventures in the area that I was wanting to pursue, and I wanted to, be civilized, be adults about the situation. I tried to clean the slate and just stay friends. She threatened a restraining order against me. So, yeah. That's been my luck in that area. It's like I've had a few off and on flings here and there, but I've only had like 4 serious relationships. But a lot of people also ask me, well, okay, Dakota, that's great, it sounds like it could really be your daughter. But what's going on with that man? Do you know who that is? Well, initially, the whole image of, the long white robe and the long brown hair, I thought Jesus, but I went to speak with a few of my medium, who was sort of my mentor over the years, a pastor who know me since I was little, who recognized that I seemed to possess unique abilities. as well as I even spoke to a couple people who had direct connections to the Vatican, and all their theories is that the man wasn't a man, but it was the Archangel Michael. And the interesting thing about this is that shortly after my father went to prison, I got back in touch. I had a lot of long-lost relatives reach out to me, and one of them happened to be my grandmother, my father's mother, who actually claimed to have the ability to see and talk with the angels. And naturally, when someone makes a claim like that, I try to be skeptical because, there aren't legitimately disturbed people, and there's some people who just flat out try to be fraudulent, thinking that they can get away with cashing in thousands of dollars from some schmuck who is too gullible to question things. But those traits I mentioned earlier that I kept secret, she knew about them. She was also able to answer a lot of other, what I call me and God questions. Basically, things I kept so quiet that only myself and some higher power would know about it. I've seen glimpses of Olivia here and there, but nowhere near as intense as back then. However, I've dealt with a number of other incidents where I can say for certainty that whatever abilities lie inside my head are still there. The fact that this was a direct connection to Michael, he assisted me in creating exorcism procedures that came in handy when I've had cases go down where the entity I was going up against managed to get away from the client. Now, the exorcism worked, got them out of their influence out of the client, but as vengeance, they personally tried to hunt me down and pick me up, pinned me to the wall, and tried choking me to death. And had Michael not helped intervene, I'd probably be dead right now. And, a couple of people have told the story, like, what do you mean Michael helped intervene? Let's just say this. The particular entity in question is speculated to be a Nephilim. Part celestial, part human. And if demons can possess people, the angels have that ability as well. However, it's not wise that they get too involved, especially with someone of Michael's stature, because their very presence is overwhelming enough to where they can accidentally just set fire to the world just by interacting with us. And that was one of the revelations that came to me in dealing with these things, but also revealed quite a lot more, which I want to get into after this next commercial break. Now, another revelation from dealing with the angels so much and through all that I've read and I've studied on the matters, the idea is that the angels come from higher realms may in fact intersect with mathematical equations of the multiverse. And what do I mean by that? Let me explain. A lot of the ideas is that spirits, ghosts, things like that, they lie on a parallel plane to our own world, right? Well, another plane of existence which intersects with our own would be the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension, in a lot of quantum theories, dictates time. And in that, it is simply the measurement of change within a three-dimensional world. And spirits that exist on this, in the fourth dimension, in theory, could change their appearance to make themselves look younger or older. However, their appearance would only be limited to their appearance, how they looked in their three-dimensional lives. But it's also from the fourth dimension that space becomes a lot bigger. There's a lot more room. And a lot more ways that, because we ourselves exist in a three-dimensional space, cannot perceive. Those who possess psychic abilities, who have had exposure to the afterlife, some sort of disposition exists to where a connection from higher dimensions, there seems to be some sort of synchronicity in which allows mediums, psychics, things like that, to be able to perceive more about the physical world. In that, somehow, they seem to coexist. Because a being in a fourth dimensional world could easily see inside a person, see inside a house, without actually having to go in the house. They can stand outside and go, oh, there's your keys. They can look at a person and say, oh, you might need to have surgery here. Something's wrong here. They wouldn't need x-rays. If we could have fourth dimensional doctors take a look at us, they could actually operate on us without us really seeing what's going on. They could rearrange our organs even, if they wanted to. They can even cause something to become a mirror image of itself. There's a really good video by the Action Lab that really explains this pretty well. And there's also another explanation that's offered by Carl Sagan. Both these videos are available on YouTube. I'll see if I can't put those links in the description below if you want to check them out. Please do, so that way I can move on to other ideas. So, in dealing with the angels, and if you look at enough lore, you can actually get details of spirits essentially moving higher in dimensional space. Beings that exist in the fifth dimensional realm can see how varying timelines would work out. They could interact and walk between those willingly. And chances are, if someone says if there's a fifth dimension, someone came from a fifth dimensional space, their world is three-dimensional. However, they move through fifth dimensional space in order to get to here, which is actually one of the theories about a lot of the Mandela effect and even UFOs. Once we get to the sixth dimension, that's where alternating worlds come out. The fifth dimension, all the worlds would look pretty similar with minor differences because they all started at a singular starting point. The conditions in which brought the world to that point were exactly the same until there's some sort of deviation. It may seem minor, but nevertheless, it is because of this, time travel would also technically erase any paradoxes we perceive about the events, in that nothing flows linear. To quote Ant-Man from Avengers Endgame, Back to the Future is bullshit. It is quite possible for someone to go back and interact with their own past selves and not really affect the future. which also technically erases what I've always called this incident with my daughter Olivia. I've always called the Olivia paradox because will her coming back in time to save me somehow affect me meeting her father, her mother, allowing her to be born? Would me speaking about it somehow scare away her mother simply because the idea that she and I are quite literally a match made in heaven, the fact that that sweet little that version of Sweet Nothings is not a goddamn metaphor, scares her away. It's possible. But being that Michael was able to intervene, it is quite possible he exists at a high enough plane to where he was able to see so many different outcomes. He knew that the most likely one for my survival and for Olivia's birth. It is quite possible that those conditions in its own were enough of a constant to where he was able to make a safe bet. That if I continue to live, no matter what, if I continue to live on, Olivia will come. So long as I'm still willing to be who I am, do what I do, Olivia will come. And that's been my motivation through all these years. And not just through helping people through ghost hunting or my connections with local law enforcement, but investing in all these startup companies, trying to fulfill much of my bucket list as possible. But it's also the fact why I don't shy away from changing things up in life or through my social media feeds, despite advice from social media experts. Because if I try to limit to myself, or one of the mistakes I've been making is trying to keep all the aspects of myself separated, in which life becomes a constant juggling act. If I'm going to truly express who I am, I need to fulfill all those sides of me at once, not try to turn anything off. And that's why occasionally on my social media feeds you see an occasional goofy video, because I like to do those to relieve some of my stress, because I like to help make people laugh, make people smile, maybe make their days a little bit better. I like helping people, and even if me acting like a goofball for a little bit is enough to help them get through whatever troubles they're going through, that's more than enough motivation that I need to keep going. So being that this is a topic of suicide, will also be a link to a resource page on my website that I've gathered of international hotlines for anyone to call if they're facing these things. And I want you to know, and if you want to use me as an example, please do it. You can beat these thoughts. And for those of you who may be concerned that these things are still around, I'll admit, every now and then, yeah, I have a low point. Every now and then, when things seem to spiral out of control, I get low. But it's also through my travels, my work, and to those who I've met along the way, my mentors, my colleagues, my friends, my travel family. I know that I've built a life where I'm okay. I'm going to beat this. And you can too. Trust me. And honestly, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to get a hold of me. I'll do my best to help you out. You can find me on here. Try and get me through the comment section, but the best way to get a hold of me is either through my social media pages or through my website, because I don't always get all the notifications on time. And it is with the Hunt for Olivia special. I'm going to address this. I'm going to show a little bit more about the science that might have actually allowed this to happen in the first place. And we're going to see if I can capture my daughter's voice on camera. Even maybe see her. Because I'm going to be honest with you all right now. Even though I was kind of hinting that there's things with my family that are honestly not the best, I do have an uncle who, essentially, he could be like my identical twin. We're so alike. He has 3 kids now who, realize he and myself and their father are so much alike that they occasionally call me Dad. And just about everybody who's met us both will admit that we look alike, we sound alike, we have a lot of the same mannerisms, same senses of humor, things like that. And I'm going to admit, one of his daughters looks just like Olivia. Dear God, if that ends up being the case this entire time, that's going to be a little bit heartbreaking. But no. The reason why I brought this up, because thankfully enough happenstance in my life has taken place to where I can better gauge what's going to come. My uncle's kids, whatever traits have allowed me to be able to possess psychic abilities, honestly, for the most part, it looks like it comes from mostly my father's side of the family, but there is speculation that somewhere along my mother's side, I am a distant cousin of Ed and Lorraine Warren. So, can't exactly rule anything out at this point. There's a lot of unknowns to where I may have to include like a DNA test reveal for this one. I don't know. Anyway, the Hunt for Olivia special is going to be an attempt to make contact with Olivia, an attempt to make contact with the Archangel Michael, maybe even get them on camera. I'm also going to kind of showcase a few other things. There's going to be a couple of experimental procedures that I want to try out. I'm going to try to present this in sort of a documentary style. So I'm going to show you a little bit around Murtaugh, which happens to be a town where I have a lot of history, not just because I was practically raised by my grandparents, but I've had quite a few cases out there. My bedroom where I first saw Olivia also happens to be the room my grandfather passed away in. So there could easily be a lot of emotional residual energy in that room that may allow for conditions to come forward to allow this experiment to work. So be sure to stay tuned. I'm going to have more updates as they come on my social media page. On my social media pages. I'm going to try to simultaneously stream through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube Live, but YouTube is definitely going to be a guarantee. There's going to be a nice little event that we're going to put together, or it'll be a YouTube premiere if I can't get the live thing figured out. So I honestly hope you join me on this adventure. There's going to be links down below to the videos I mentioned that discuss the dimensions of the universe a bit more. And there's also going to be a link to my website. Check those out. Find me on social media. Add me. Don't be afraid to chat. I try to be friendly. I try to get to everyone, but just remember, I am a one-man operation. my other businesses I simply invested in and occasionally help out, but I am a one-man operation. So, bear with me if I can't get to you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas for future episodes of this radio show, questions you want to ask me about my ghost hunting, let me know. Halloween is coming, my friends. Halloween, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. Be there. Also, on November 12th, it's going to be oh my God, the episode's coming out on Friday the 13th. I've been invited to do an interview on X Zone Radio. I was a guest on there before, many years ago, but we're making a comeback to discuss a lot of my caseload. This episode, a new book I'm currently working on, and some more. So, like I said, find me on social media to get all the latest updates. I love you all. Thank you for letting me share this. We can do this, guys. If you're feeling any of these thoughts, you are not alone. I love you. You understand that? I love you. And honestly, talking about all that stuff on this episode, honestly, made me feel a lot better about certain things going on in my life. So, that's good. That's good. We want positive energy. We want nothing but love and light and happiness and silliness. I should probably get going. October's going to be a very busy month for me and my friends. Because on top of juggling my ghost hunting stuff, my businesses, I'm also taking advantage of the fact that I'm house sitting for relatives. And at the same time I got a house that I'm fucking called for jury duty. God damn it. And October 13th, I'm also going to be attending a writer's workshop with one of my old mentors, who was the first person to ever put me in a book back when I was 16. So, a lot of fun stuff's coming up. Find my social media to get more information or just to find entertaining videos. I love you all. I'll see you next time. Be kind to one another. Let's do this thing.